I just don't think you should work for somebody your whole life. You should figure out how to work for yourself.
So Mr. Wonderful from Shark Tank says everybody should be an entrepreneur. I disagree. I don't think, first of all, everybody wants to be an entrepreneur. I think a lot of people just aren't interested in going down that path. And I think a lot of people that do want to go down that path are doing it for the wrong reason, which is namely they are hoping to get really rich. If going into entrepreneurship or wanting to own your own business, the sole motivation is money, you're not going to make it. I just don't think that's going to be enough motivation to get you through all the rough patches. It's the kind of thing where from the outside, you look at somebody with seemingly a lot of success, a nice watch, a fancy car, a big house, and that's the part that you're thinking about. You're not thinking about the 10 years of struggle that they went through to get to that point, all the hard work, the sleepless nights, the weekends. You're not dreaming about that part. You're just dreaming about the rewards that they finally got to achieve after 10 years of hard work. So very quickly, you're going to find out it's not fancy watches and nice cars and big houses. It's a lot of work and grinding and not much money and stress and everything else. I don't think it's for everyone, and I don't think it's going to work for you if you're not going into it for the right reasons. And his advice just seems to be everybody should work for themselves. If you have an idea that you want to execute and the only way to execute it is to go out on your own, then do it. But don't just go out on your own or try to start something because somebody said you should or somebody kind of teased you with the idea that that's the only way to financial freedom or time freedom or anything else. There are lots of paths to success, and entrepreneurship is just one of them, but only if you're really cut out for it and you're really doing it for the right reasons.
You need to be too careful when you're buying a business. A young lady comes to me for advice about a business that she's wanting to buy. And what it was a laundromat. I was more than happy to help her. She brought in all the paperwork that she'd been given on that laundromat. And when I broke down the water, there was not enough water being used to justify the gross revenue. So I knew that they were lying to that lady. And you can't believe what they're saying. You have to listen and then verify that what they said is true.
Yeah, well, I mean, as somebody who does due diligence all the time for people looking to buy businesses, this is 100% accurate. And in my experience, it's not so much that people are out lying to you, like in this case where he's saying, well, they were, the water they were using didn't justify the sales, so they were making stuff up. That's very, very, very rare. People don't generally go to the trouble of fabricating documents like bank statements and tax returns and financial statements to trick you into believing that a business is doing better than it is. They're either asking too much to start, or a lot of times their accounting isn't as good as it should be, or they've been overly generous with adding back things that they say, oh, the business doesn't need to spend that, but really it did. Or there's 700 other ways that the numbers don't exactly match what it is that they're claiming. You definitely, before you buy a business, need to take the time to check it out and understand what you're getting, verify that what they've told you is accurate and applies to you, not just applies to them. But even more important than any of that, I think, is really that you have a plan to grow the business. You have a way to take it from wherever it is now to 50 to 100% larger over the next 3 or 4 years. If you have no idea how to grow the business you're buying, then what's going to happen is the business you're buying is going to shrink, and it's going to become harder and harder to get money out of it, harder to make those loan payments, harder to justify the investment at all. So I think the number one best thing you can do if you're looking at buying a business is to understand how you're going to take that business and grow it. And if you're not clear on that, then take a step back before you do anything else and figure that out. Once you have a plan, a reliable, provable plan that will work to grow a business, then do the due diligence and understand that you're really getting it at the point where you think you're getting it, and then you can move forward with the rest. But without that piece, I think really the whole idea of buying the business is much riskier than you're expecting, because a growing business is a dying business, and a business that dies isn't one you want to buy.
20s and 30s and starting your first business, here are my 3 best tips to make sure you do it right. Number 1, naming your business. Research first, as this is critical to ensure you don't infringe on other business trademarks. Number 2, creating your LLC and selecting your business category. This is important, and make sure your company is listed in the correct category. Number 3, proper documents for your LLC to insulate you from liability. An operating agreement, real address, and phone number are key for legitimacy and future funding needs.
I think we've seen this guy in other videos before. He's always walking so fast, kind of out of breath, giving this advice like he's on the way to go put out a fire right before he gives us a talk about how to set up our LLC. I don't really understand that. But As far as his advice, first, naming your business. Yes, you don't want to infringe on anybody's trademark, but I also think you don't want to over stress about thinking about your business name. The name of the business is not a big deal to its success, right? Google is $1 trillion company, but it also could be something that two guys run out of their garage, right? Google doesn't mean anything, and the name by itself doesn't really carry any weight. It only carries weight because they were successful, but it really could have been anything. So overthinking the name and expecting that the name is going to have a huge impact on how successful the business is, I think is a mistake. Apple, right, is another huge company. Apple could sell anything. It doesn't actually even sell apples. It has no relationship to apples. So how they became a giant, computer industry pillar company, who knows? It wasn't because of the name. So there are some products that the name is what helps sell it, but I wouldn't spend a lot of time stressing about the name. If you think you might be just do a quick USPTO search, US Patent and Trademark Office search, just to make sure that name isn't taken, the exact name you want isn't taken by somebody else. But that's a very quick exercise. I wouldn't stress over it, and I wouldn't say that's critical to your total business success. If you screwed up, pick somebody else's name, you can always change it later and keep on going. As long as your business is solid, your customers aren't going to be too upset. Then the second thing he said was get the right company category. I don't understand. He also said your business could be red flagged for your name. I guess if your name was we sell cocaine, yes, maybe you might be red flagged, but I can't think of too many other names that are going to cause a problem with your business getting a loan or getting investors or whatever because of the name of the business, unless it's just something totally outrageous like that. Same thing with the business category, right? We do accounting, but if my NAICS code accidentally said we did plumbing or refrigerator repair or long haul trucking, nothing's gonna get screwed up. I would just go and recategorize it the next time I filed my tax return, and on we'd go. Not a big deal at all. And again, I don't see you getting denied funding from investors or banks because your code doesn't exactly match what you do. Obviously, try to get that right, but the whole tip about that doesn't make a lot of sense to me. And then the last thing he was talking about was having the correct paperwork for your LLC. Again, yes, grab some boilerplate documents. If it's just you, if you're a single member LLC, there's nobody really to argue with. On the other hand, if you have partners, then yes, take the time to make sure you've properly documented who's contributing what, who's doing what happens in the event that you close the business or split up or disagree or sell the business. Those are all key things to figure out, but that should be part of your overall business strategy anyway. So hopefully you are taking care of that. But if you're just a one-person business, again, boilerplate forms are going to be fine. Having the LLC is going to offer protection, and the rest of it, don't spend thousands of dollars with a lawyer, most likely. Asterisk, this is not legal advice. It kind of is, but it isn't. You don't need to spend thousands and thousands of dollars drawing up custom documents for your LLC when you can use boilerplate documents just as well if it's just you running the business in 99% of the cases.
My 3 top tips if you are starting a business. Number 1 is to test the demand of your product or service before you launch it. Number 2, and this is so important, build your networks and your contacts early. The third thing is to focus on your brand over your product.
I think those are decent points. One of the things I frequently advise clients to do if they're starting something new, either a whole new business or a new line, is to make sure that there are people out there that want to buy what you're planning to sell. A lot of times people feel like, oh, I had a great idea for a business or a product or a service, and then they spend 6 months, 12 months, tens of thousands of dollars building it out, and then they finally go to launch and find out, nobody really wanted that, or they didn't want it the way they built it, or the way, the color they designed it in, or with the features they added. A lot of the product reviews that we do, which are really startup businesses, focuses on that. They're building something that may not really have an audience at the end of it. So I think her advice is definitely solid there. Reaching out to people who've done what you want to do, sure, you can try. I'm not sure how much you're going to have success with that. A lot of people who have been successful are pretty busy, and it's hard to get a hold of them, get them to give you their time and coach you along the way. It sounds like she's kind of talking about free mentorship. I wouldn't spend a lot of time on that. And third, she says focus on the brand over the product. I think the better place to focus is on the customer. So kind of like with point one, who are you planning to sell to? What specific things do they want? What do they not like about the current choices they have, and what can your product do or your service do better to be a better fit with what they want? So yes, some of that is branding, helping to explain to customers why what you've got is better than their other options, but you actually have to have something that's better than the other options. So I think start with that, then the brand can focus on explaining that, and then you have a much better chance of having a good long-term successful business.
Everyone shouldn't start a business. If you can get $250K a year plus bonus out of W-2, you're making more than most small business owners plus less stress. Let's talk about it. First off, hi, I'm Brian. I've been the $250,000 a year corporate guy, and I quit to build my own business while traveling around the world, and that's what I've done for the last year and a half. I have perspective from both sides. So now I'm going to give you the real, and some of you may not like the answer here. I believe that you're either born an entrepreneur or you're not. Because looking back at my corporate career, I always questioned everything. Even back to college and my school years, I was always like, why do we have to do it like this? Why can't we do it better? Why can't we do it this way? I always had an issue with other people's systems. I always had a high tolerance for risk. I always wanted to take things into my own hands. When I say that entrepreneurs aren't created, they're unlocked, it means that we're all square pegs trying to fit into the round holes of corporate or whatever job you're working for years and years and years until eventually you reach your breaking point. Maybe in your 20s, your 30s, your 50s. I agree with this guy that 99% of people are not meant to be entrepreneurs, which is by design, it's by default. Next question you may have is, how do you do this? Got 3 tips in closing. Number 1, create a 3-year vision about what your dream life and business would look like. Number 2, you need to build a cash and investment runway. So number 3, give me a follow. Subscribe to the pod. We teach you how to do this daily.
Okay, I have been asked this question before on various podcasts and interviews and things, whether or not I think entrepreneurs are born, or whether or not I think anyone can become an entrepreneur, and whether you have to feel like some internal drive to be an entrepreneur, if that's a requirement to be successful as an entrepreneur. I don't really have the answer to that. I definitely can relate to what this guy was saying. I always felt like places I worked, jobs I had, I thought, I could do this better. There's probably improvements we could make here. There's things I would do differently if I was running it, but I was never sort of the ready to fit into the just be quiet and do everything and just don't question anything. I was always questioning everything. But does that requirement exist for me to have been successful as an entrepreneur? I don't know. I think a lot of people do fall into entrepreneurship. They have a skill and various things just conspire to where people start hiring them to use that skill, and before you know it, without really meaning to, now they own a business. People are hiring them not as an employee, but as a business owner, or as a laborer, as a freelancer, but it turns into a business. And is that something they got because they questioned everything and didn't want to follow the rules, or is that just the way things happen? I don't know. I think to be successful as an entrepreneur, it definitely helps to have a plan and want to be your own boss and build your business and not just have it be an accident. But how it gets started and whether or not you need to have that desire to break out and do your own thing and always question everything, I don't know. I don't have a strong feeling about whether or not that's really required. I guess I feel like it isn't required to get into business. It may be helpful if you're wanting to start something, but you don't have a skill that you're just suddenly getting hired to do. But I do agree. I think you need to have a vision. If you want to really have a successful business, you have to sit down and think about it, not just let it happen to you. I think if you're going to quit your job and launch into something, it's good to have some runway and some financial support just to keep yourself afloat, so you don't have to go back and get a job after 3 months, when if you just had a couple more months to keep going, you would have gotten to the point where you wouldn't have needed to get a job. I don't know about tip 3 though, subscribe to him. Is that really a requirement to be successful? I'm going to say probably not.